Welcome back to the Technology Alchemist, your source for technology advice, strategic technology planning, technology coaching, time-saving advice, and a pragmatic look at increasing revenue and profit through your technology engine. I'm your host, the Technology Alchemist himself, Mike Mahoney. Our sponsor today is your Virtual CTO. Your Virtual CTO is a technology services company specializing in increasing your revenue and profit through a close examination of your technology engine. Your Virtual CTO offers exclusive coaching for business leaders. It is the only business coaching program that focuses on technology as a major part of the program. If you want to learn how you can make more money by tuning up your technology engine, learn more at getyourvirtualcto.com. So today's guest is James Pyle. James is a dynamic and energetic serial entrepreneur. He specializes in lean startups, transformational turnarounds, and rapidly scaled exits. James has a tenacious work ethic and track record of being a self-motivated top 1% producer and leader in any environment. He's considered uncommon among the uncommon because he's been able to break through barriers that others cannot surpass, no matter what it takes. James is an accomplished speaker, coach, executive leadership and management professional, startup specialist, business development and sales guru, digital marketing, strategic planner, and executor extraordinaire. Now, James can be found incubating startups, speaking, coaching high-performance entrepreneurs, investing in real estate, and volunteering his time performing service work with community outreach organizations. He holds a BBA in entrepreneurship marketing and HR management, and is an Eric Thomas and Associates certified speaker. Welcome to the show, James.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
It's quite a bio.
Yeah, I've done a couple things.
Yeah, it sure sounds like you have. So tell me about what you've done in your career so far.
Sure. So I actually was fortunate enough to get a really good scholarship to go to university down here in Los Angeles at Loyola Marymount. And so that's where I attended school. And during that time, I was actually awarded the Entrepreneur Student of the Year. And I just actually posted a Throwback Thursday post on my Instagram earlier with this photo of me getting the award. And it was an instrumental moment in my life because it was the moment when I realized that I could do this. I could be an entrepreneur. I could actually start and build businesses and work for myself. So shortly after that, I actually launched my first company. It was a telecom company. And I went through a series of telesales focused businesses. Pretty much every company I've ever scaled has been involved in selling things heavily using the telephone. Even to this day, when email and text message and social media marketing are so hot and heavy, there's still no substitute for that person-to-person interaction. So all of that led me to actually being able to go and live internationally in Australia. Around the time I was 26, built a digital marketing agency out there. Ended up back in North Texas after that, and I had developed some really bad addictions to both alcohol and prescription drugs, namely Adderall. And I had ADD, ADHD my whole life, and I took this Adderall, and man, I could work for days on end. So, it really got me hooked on it in my 20s, and basically ended up in my early 30s. I had scaled a real estate investing venture in North Texas, and unfortunately, while at the same time, fortunately, I was in a delirium from the prescription drugs I was taking. And I pulled some really, really bad people into my business and pretty much helped them push me right out of it. And so that was basically when I had my rock bottom moment at about 32 years old, had my midlife or quarter life crisis, whatever person wants to call it. And that was the true come to Jesus moment, as they say. That was a moment when I realized that the way I'd been living my life had not led into a good path and a good direction. And just there was this thing inside me that was telling me that there must be a better way to live. So that began the process of me rebuilding myself. I basically extracted myself from a lot of the world and society, and I just kind of went into monk mode. And I began evaluating all the conditioning and programming that I'd received my entire life, and started questioning, why do I believe what I believe, and what had I been taught where, and where had these lies surfaced inside myself that I had been living in. And it got me to this place where I really dug into my faith. And I really built a really strong faith, and that led me to this place of wanting to coach and help others. And so that's what I got into. Started doing some high ticket one-on-one coaching a few years ago. And that's a space I stayed in. because I really, really enjoyed helping high performing entrepreneurs to overcome their limitations and be able to really achieve their big goals. And so then that actually ended up, of course, through, COVID and everything last year, coming into this year, we decided that, okay, it's time to go ahead and roll this thing out to more people. So I'm a little bit different than a lot of coaches. A lot of coaches actually start off with like online courses and digital programs, and their goal is to get to high ticket offers. I've been very blessed and fortunate in the sense that I've been actually doing the high ticket one-on-one coaching, and now I'm trying to actually come down the mountain to be able to reach more people. So it's kind of interesting, how things work out. But so that's what I've been up to, and that's what we're in the mode of right now, is producing courses to help people in self-awareness and kingdom entrepreneurship.
You and I match up quite well because that's a very similar story. I mean, I started out as a CTO, and I found that I understood the business side so well that I started mentoring different executives on our executive team and teaching them about technology, and it kind of just understanding the technical aspect upgraded their skills a lot. And like you, at some point that company shut down and I went out on my own, and like you, I got lucky enough to get into the one-on-one higher ticket coaching. And I'm now in the same spot as you, looking to go, to go the other way with some other offers that maybe are a little less time intensive, But one of the things you said, you said when you went through that as you put it, a quarter life crisis, whatever you want to call it, you kind of did an analysis of your life. And I like to preach to people that they should look at the situation in their business and think of all of the predictable outcomes from those things. It's going to tell them like things that need to change, things that need to be tightened up. Sounds like you went through a similar process with your entire life. So like what gave you the idea, like what inspired you to finally like take a step back and say, okay, here's everything I'm doing. These things are good, these things are bad, and then weed out the good and the bad.
Yeah, totally. Great question. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this one real deep. So what ended me up in that place was actually the culmination of my really bad exit from this investment company I was building. I actually was in such a dark place. I was ready to end my life. And I can remember like standing in my bathroom mirror with my 45 automatic in my hand and thinking to myself, like, how do I not mess this up? Like, how do I do this and make sure it really happens? Because knowing my luck, I'm the guy who blows his face off and then has to live another 50 years and, put up with all that. So, it was like I was in the worst of the worst place I'd ever been in my life. And I was just so embarrassed and ashamed from what had happened that I just thought there's no other way to come back from this. So that was the moment when things really came to a halt for me. Fortunately, I did not take my life. I chickened out. I couldn't do it. I ended up eating a handful of Xanax and trying to go to sleep. And then I woke up an hour or two later with like 3 police officers with gloves on standing over my body because my brother had alerted the police, and they actually came to check on me because he was my the emergency contact at my apartment so they could enter my dwelling without my permission. So I woke up to these police in the room with the gloves on thinking they're inspecting the dead body. And I'm trying to put together what's happening here as I'm waking up. And so that really just led me to a place where I realized that, hey, this is bad. This is toxic, and I need to just pull back. And so that's what I did. I got on a flight the next morning and flew out to California, and I just took some time to dig in and really inspect things. And just, I really believe that the awareness came from within myself. I've been on this journey of increasing my self-awareness my entire life, self-development, and just becoming the best version of self. And there was just something inside of me that was just literally calling out to me. And I believe it was part of my faith. I believe it was the energy of our creator calling out to me inside, telling me, hey, this is not how you're supposed to live life. And so it was from me hearing that I just really began to dig into things. And I was like, for instance, one of the things I did, and still to this day, I run on a 24-hour clock. Never been in the military, but I had always run on a 12-hour clock my whole life. And I thought, well, who taught me 12 hours is right? I don't know. So I just started questioning every single thing. Hey, I put my left pant leg on first. Cool. Now I'm going to put my right pant leg on first. If I put my left sock on first, now I put my right sock on first. I literally called everything under review. I stopped watching all TV shows, all movies, all music, everything. And that's why I said it was an unfortunate as well as fortunate experiences, is that, I'm very grateful that I had this opportunity in my early 30s to come crashing and burning down and really get my life in order and become aligned with my faith and build my life with that concrete foundation in place, rather than, ending up at 60, 70, 80 years old, living this horrible, destructive life full of all these carnal and fleshly, worldly pursuits. and end up being unhappy at the end of the day. And I also do believe in the greater purpose of that. I know that my testimony, my path has been because I'm not the only one. I'm not the Lone Ranger, right? So a lot of other people out there dealing with similar and even worse issues than me. And part of my mission is to help get this content out for people so that they can know that they can overcome these things and be their best self.
That's intense. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's really intense.
Totally.
But it reminds me of so many people, your story about, holding the 45 and wondering, how can you not mess it up? So many people realize when they're ready to give up that, well, I haven't done a great job of other things. So how do I know I'm going to do a great job of this? And even just giving up, like walking away from a business, people end up leaving themselves with massive debt and other issues, and when they could have probably avoided it, right? So kudos to you for taking a step back and using that as
Thank
like
you.
a life-changing, literally life-changing experience. I mean, look, I mean, even the pills didn't work, right? So I mean, you were obviously meant to still be here, or you wouldn't be. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. When people attempt suicide and they don't succeed, I always think, yeah, wasn't meant to be, because if it was meant to be, they'd be gone,
Totally.
That's super intense. And I mean, and thank you for sharing such a personal thing, because most people aren't willing to go there. So how has that experience in your life shaped how you work with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, totally. Awesome question. And that just a quick precursor. A lot of my life, I grew up, I experienced a lot of physical abuse as a child. My father was a pharmacist and he wrote his own prescriptions and drank alcohol. And he used to just go into these fits of rage and take a chunk of kindling, like I'm talking something the size of like my grown man, 6'4" tall now forearm, and just beat us with it. And so that was my upbringing. And so I always pressed into like a physical type of upbringing or things that would challenge me physically. And so how that's all come and translated into how I'm able to help entrepreneurs today is that, we've all been through defeat. We've all been beat down by life, whether it was a physical beat down or a spiritual or an emotional beat down. And just what you talked about, there's a lot of people who they failed in business. And quite frankly, I had experienced a lot of failure in my life, but I had always done, even the businesses when I exited and I didn't make a huge profit, I still did pretty well. I didn't have like a serious loss. And the one that I was building in Texas, we were making money like crazy. I mean, it was a rapidly scaling venture. I think we sold like over 87 houses in like 18 months, as a real estate investment company. Like we were going to town. And what ended up happening though is that like it's actually provided me with the framework and the path to learn how to make it back. I'd always told myself my whole life, I came from nothing. I got no problem returning to nothing, but I hadn't quite had that experience where I had ended there. And that's where I ended up in my early 30s. And so one of the things I like to coach and encourage people in is, of course, making sure that they're aligned spiritually. Whatever a person's faith is, I happen to call it God, whatever you call it, awesome. In my world, it's undeniable that there is some sort of a spiritual force out there that's controlling and orchestrating this whole movie that we're living in, this whole experience, right? So whatever a person calls it, great. I encourage people to press into and tap into that, because that's how I believe a person really can build a solid concrete foundation to build their life on. I think that a lot of people are building a house of cards on quicksand, and eventually that's going to come down, whether it's in 10 years or 30 years or 50 years, eventually that thing's going to come crumbling down. And so where I'm able to help coach people now is increasing their self-awareness, which you touched a little bit on earlier in regard to, people using technology in their business, and then also being able to help encourage people in kingdom business principles. And one of the most important is continuing to be resilient and to use the friction of life to build resilience. Because one of our challenges is that when we go through a bad experience, a traumatic event, or a loss, then we start to build stories about like how we can't do it anymore, or how that's going to be the result in the end. And there's a really cool book called Psycho-Cybernetics that I read years ago, and you've probably heard of it. And one of the things that it talks about in that book is that it talks about worst case scenario planning, right? And it's like, no matter what's going to happen in your life, when you're going to make a decision to do something, for instance, go after a business venture, you're going to start this business venture, and let's say this whole thing blows up in your face in 12 months, and you lose all your money and everything. And then you ask yourself, how bad is that? And then once you're able to have an answer on how bad that is, then you ask yourself again, how bad is that really? And part of the conditioning we have, at least in Western society and culture, is that we need all of these things in order to do stuff, right? Instead of it being the be, do, have culture, which it really is, it's the have, do, be culture. And like, if I had more of this, I could be more of that, I could do more of this. Whereas if we just be a stronger person, and we're going to be, and then we're going to do, and then we're going to have. So that's one of the things that I'm really able to help encourage people in, is that no matter what you've been through, no matter what damage you think you've done or have had happen to you, you can achieve it. You can break through, and you may as well go for it, because even if you're, heck, my age, which I still think I'm really young. I just turned 36 2 months ago. But even if I went and worked my butt off till 46 and I failed miserably, guess what? I still have a whole bunch of life left. And at least I went after and I pursued the things I wanted to pursue. And so that's what I love to encourage people in, is to break outside the box of what society has conditioned and programmed with making you into a worker bee, to go sit in a classroom for 8 hours at a time and clock in and clock out your whole life, and really challenge that, challenge your programming, and do things to actually uplift your spirituality, breath work, meditation, journaling, gratitude journals, all these different things to get more in touch with what's inside of ourselves. And then we can bring that out into our world.
Totally makes sense. I mean, you made me think back to, I'm on my second marriage, and this one has been very good, very, very good for me. She's very supportive, and
Awesome.
we're actually business partners, and so it works really well. But in my first marriage, I remember there was a time when I had come out of a business and I was running my own business and doing quite well. We were doing like programming for other small businesses at the time, and what was the turning point for me, was, and I'll explain why in a second, was we went on vacation. And when we left for vacation, it was a 2-week vacation. We took our two kids with us, and we had like $10,000 in the savings account. We're going out to vacation, going to spend money. We spent a ton of money on this vacation. We came back, we had $30,000 in the savings account because the business kept making us money while we were gone. But for my ex-wife, that wasn't enough. She wanted a regular paycheck. She did not feel comfortable without a regular paycheck. So she pretty much, I don't want to say manipulated, but she kind of forced me into, here, you have this client, they're offering you a permanent position, take the permanent position. And at the time, I was really disappointed in that, because, you have a really successful business running, but I also wanted to make my marriage work. So I did this, and I'm glad I did, because I learned a lot about myself, about business, etc. Life didn't end. It wasn't the greatest thing ever, but life didn't end. Like you said, you pick yourself up, dust yourself off. I came out of there a better entrepreneur than when I went in, and I haven't looked back since. And that's been 15 years. So,
Wow.
your experience and mine are sort of similar. And I think we also teach our clients similar things, because for me, I talk about predictable outcomes. Mainly because, like for instance, I tell clients, if you have, say, a membership website, and that's what your business is, well, you have this many members, you can predict how much money you're going to make at the end of the month. It's a predictable outcome, but how you handle it is the next step. Where do you invest it, et cetera, like you're talking about. And I think most people don't think that far. And they're also, like you say, they're super worried about, what if I fail? So what do you tell somebody that says, well, I want to do this, but I'm afraid to fail?
Yeah, awesome. And thanks for sharing that. I do believe that authenticity and vulnerability are the most powerful place to operate from. And that was the direction I was going in. It sort of came off the trail there when I was talking about coming up with that physical upbringing. A lot of my life being a man and wrestling and playing football, I was always thought I was a macho guy, plus I had been so humiliated and beaten down as a kid that I didn't ever learn how important authenticity and vulnerability is. And as a coach, that's actually one of the best ways, like what you just talked about, just that story you shared right there. That's actually the way that walls come down and barriers come down, and we actually connect deep down into people's hearts and into their soul with them. And so in regard to your question of, somebody being, I guess, a little apprehensive to take the step, one of the things to do is to do that worst case scenario planning exercise I just mentioned, to sit down and figure out, how bad is it? Like, let's say you lost, this business didn't work out. You lost all your money. You had to move back in with your parents. You had to do all these things. How bad is that really? Are you all of a sudden a quadriplegic and can't get out of bed in the morning by yourself? Or like, are you still going to have your body parts and your brains and your intelligence and your experience to build it back with? So that's a big part of it. The other thing that you really touched on that was powerful in there is how we are influenced by those that are in our lives. And also knowing that on the other side of all the scary stuff that's out there, that's our dreamland. And just like what you had experienced with your ex-wife, I'm sure that during those times that, there was a lot of heavy emotions and hectic thoughts going on. And it wasn't just like a smooth sailing, every day
Right.
sunshine and rainbows. There was a lot of scary stuff. And so one of the things that we do to encourage people that want to go in a direction that they haven't explored is to just do some of that future projection planning. Take a look at what your life would be like 5 years from now if you didn't change your marriage. How will your life be 10 years from now if you don't change, right? If you want to break out and you want to pursue this business opportunity, how will your life look either better or worse in 5 years if you don't do it? What about if you do it, right? And oftentimes what we find is when you start going through that protocol with people, I think it's called the Dickens process, I want to say, but basically you go through the protocol with people and you get them to envision like what their life would be like basically up to 5, 10, 20 years from now if they didn't take action on these things that they need to change, and how horrible life will be and how sucky the daily experience will be. And then you flip it and you turn it into the positive manifestation and going through the same process of what life will look like when you do these things. And basically what that is a good example of is that we have to, without trying to sound all cliche, we have to dream it in order to believe it. And when we believe it, we will achieve it. And that's been the number one thing that I share with people my entire life. People always ask me all the time, oh, James, what's the most important thing for an entrepreneur, or what's been the thing that's led you to success? Do you want to know what it is? It's literally just almost like this arrogant confidence in myself that I'm going to make it happen. And it's like, I wake up every morning and it doesn't matter what is stacked against me that day. I know I'm going to make it happen. And personally, for me, I know I'm going to make it happen because I'm tapping into the supernatural. I'm tapping into the strength of the spirits that are out there that control the impossible and the unlimited. And a lot of my life, I would be building businesses, or I would have an idea come to me and share with people about, oh, this would be a cool concept. And literally people tell me, you're crazy. There's no way you could do that. It's crazy. And that became my indicator to know I was on the right path. When people started telling me, hey, you're crazy, and I'm like, okay, this is a good idea. I'm about to do it because I'm going to press into my faith. And I know that I'm going to be able to activate that spiritual energy. And, without sounding all woo woo and, this and that and the other thing, because to each person, their own beliefs are your own. Our perception is our reality. It's the law of attraction and that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The fact of the matter is, though, is we've been seeing a lot more people have a lot more success when they're aligned with the spiritual component and they operate with that in the business environment. Whereas most people, what happens is they get this idea within themselves. Usually it's from a spiritual energy, and then we try to hold it in the carnal, and we try to just think about how we're going to make it happen with just us and what we can do. So in order to help encourage people to step out and do that, it's that process of the future projection. And it's also checking in with your spiritual alignment and what you believe in yourself, knowing your identity and believing in yourself.
I agree with you. You had said earlier that like when you approached your quarter life crisis, that your addiction had you bringing in the wrong people, to surround you. And people who listen to this show know that I have a theory about, I basically call it the chemical mixture of two personalities. And I think that, we all have those friends that like you go out in a group, and if that guy shows up, it's going to be a hilarious night because he's a joker and makes everything funny. And then when he's not there, it's like a lot more toned down. And so that person's presence, their energy changes everything. And I think it's the same thing. Like, I look back at that situation with my ex-wife and I think to myself, yeah, I could have been a jerk and stood strong and said, nope, I'm sticking with this business. But ultimately, this is going to sound kind of wishy-washy for people, but ultimately I wound up with 2 more children that I wouldn't have had. And they're, my children are everything to me. So, going from 2 to 4, I wouldn't have had those children. We would have definitely gotten a divorce because she was dead serious. She did not want to deal with the uncertainty. And she literally told me, I know we're making good money, but it could stop. And that's what I'm worried about. All right, we'll give this a try. But I think 2 people come together, they create this chemical reaction together, and it's either going to propel them towards whatever their version of success is or not. And you have to decide, all right, that person, not good for me. Can't have that person. And, sometimes people aren't good for you for business, but hanging out is okay. So, you'll have people approach you about, I want to do this business idea or that business idea. And you just have to be tactful about how you like kind of push that to the side and avoid it. Or maybe confront it head on, depending on the person. But the mixture between those people is what really ends up propelling you or holding you back, right? And it's really true when you hear you're basically the sum of like the 5 closest people to you. And it totally makes sense because, if you take a little bit of, hydrochloric acid and you mix it with something else, you're going to get some crazy chemical reaction. and sometimes it's explosive, right? And we just have to be willing to ride that to the end. And like I absolutely love this whole concept you have of worst case scenario, because it's true. I mean, if you're not going to wind up dead, homeless, without your limbs or something, give it a try. I mean, if the worst case is you have to move back in with your parents, or move to a smaller place or something, you'll get back there. Just give it a try. And that's the thing. I think too many of us are afraid to go to that next step and give it a try, right? So like, what was your inspiration to, you said it was at 32, you're 36 now. So in these last 4 years, what's been your inspiration to drive you to where you are now?
Totally. This has actually been one of the biggest upgrades of my life. After everything came crashing down for me, there was a time where I thought that I didn't want to be in business anymore. I thought, oh man, money is bad. This stuff is bad. It led me to a lot of these bad things. I don't want anything to do with it anymore. And also a lot of my life, I was in sales my whole life, and I frankly stretched the truth often. And I really had a lot of awareness in this moment that basically what had happened to me was like the culmination of, with interest, the things that I had been doing to people my entire life in smaller doses, and I wasn't out there like intentionally trying to rip people off, but I told lies when I would sell stuff. Hey, I only have 4 left and there's a whole warehouse full of them, whatever it might be, right? There was deception, there was untruths. And basically that was one of the biggest upgrades for me, was that, I felt this thing inside me telling me like, oh, you just got a fat dose of the medicine you've been doling out, and all of a sudden it don't taste so good, does it, buddy? And then I heard, our creator telling me, hey, do you know how hard it is to sell without telling one single untruth? And I was like, ooh, like this is the new challenge for my life right now, is I'm going to figure out how to beat this game with no cheat codes, because how many people out there selling stuff and marketing stuff are telling the total honest truth, right? And now I'm not trying to sound like I'm some crazy righteous tip there, but so basically what ended up happening was that I'd sort of lost the drive to be an entrepreneur. And I had actually been operating in this place of, questioning myself, questioning my abilities. Oh, I went down this path and like all these bad things happened. Is this really what I'm meant to do? And it was just a process of putting myself back together. And one of the things that you mentioned in there is actually one of the things that helped me the most. And that is that I really became aware of what the influences in my life were, and not just in people. Right. It was like movies and TV shows and
everything.
Music. Yeah, everything. And the most important one was my own self-talk to myself inside my head, as well as the words I'm speaking out of my mouth. Because I actually believe that after like love is the highest frequency in the universe, I believe the second most powerful force in the universe is spoken word. Right. And the power of spoken word, most people are totally unaware of. Like, for instance, and I was in this crowd too when I was younger, singing these songs that on the radio, they're playing on Spotify or wherever, and they've got all these horrible lyrics of terrible stuff they're talking about doing. And a person singing this as though, hey, I'm professing this over my life, right? And so just being aware of the things that were influencing me, and I actually really dug into the people that I was being influenced by as well. And I began to surround myself with people who were very, very healthy for me. And I really began to make sure that I was intentionally staying away from people who were not healthy for me. And the things that you were talking about in there, there's people that they're in our life, they're good for our life, but they're not necessarily good for our business, and there's also like what you're talking about is being aware of the energy of others. So one of the things that's helped me put it back all together and be able to rebuild my drive, because I don't really talk about motivation. Motivation is like a symptom of an underlying cause of passion and drive. And so one of the things that's really helped me in that regard is, and again, I don't mean to sound like I'm a broken record here, is I pressed into my faith. I pressed into my faith, and I started really listening to the things that were coming up inside myself when I was doing meditations, when I was doing breathwork protocols, when I was doing yoga and all these things, and going for extended runs and these types of things, where I just like found this consistent message coming out of me that, hey, you're supposed to tell your story to help other people. And one of the funny things about this is that, I went through the process of, okay, now I'm going to do this, and I'm coaching people one-on-one, and I'm helping make this change. And then I'm beginning to, at the end of last year, beginning of this year, push my message out to more people. And I found myself in this place of, going through the frameworks of creating a marketing message and all these things. I'm like, wow, what is my unique selling proposition? Like, what's my value statement? Like, and I'm out here and I'm trying to like compare myself with what's available in the marketplace. Right. And then one day, literally this revelation just hit me out of the blue. It's like, dude, you have the coolest story ever. Like, your story is like the story that people like make up to like have something cool to tell about their life. And that's one of the things that I like to press into and share with people is, as much as I've had great successes in my life and I'm doing a lot of amazing things, I've also suffered terrible defeats and failures and horrible stuff. So I don't like to, even like I need to rework my bio, even because even, people read my bio, it's all these amazing accolades and accomplishments. It doesn't actually tell the story behind success. And that's one of the things I love to share with people is that, if there was a way that you could see the video of the tears rolling down Michael Jordan's face when he didn't make the basketball team the first time in high school, how much drive would that build inside you to see how defeated that man was in that moment, and then what he did with it, right? And at the same time, one of the things you were talking about in your story is that oftentimes life deals us something that looks like a crappy hand, when in fact that hand is meant to be the leverage to get to the next better hand.
Yep.
And it's about sticking the course and playing the hand we're dealt with the resources we have, knowing that a better hand will come in the future. And so it's knowing it and believing in that there is good in the world, that good things are going to happen, and that when we're able to actually elevate our vibration internally, then that plays out into the world. We attract better, higher quality people into our lives, the business partnerships and relationships we're in, and as well as even you and I connecting. We're both operating in a similar frequency of a certain vibration pattern, which causes us to intersect. And so through elevating myself, I was able to put myself in a position where I'm a stronger magnet to attract the positive things. And the other key in here is of course, the name of our company is Awareness Elevation. We're all about awareness. And the reason is because awareness is just like muscles or concentration or anything. If you're not actively working on it every day, it's going to atrophy. Just like discipline. If we go for 3 days without being disciplined and following our routine, guess what? On that fourth day, it is extremely hard to get back on course. So this is key to being able to remain aware and continue in self-mastery. And just one other quick point I want to share in this is something you brought up earlier. The most powerful method to increase awareness, and we get asked this all the time, hey, James, what's something I could do immediately to increase my awareness? I'm going to tell you right now, the most powerful thing that a person can do is self-assessment and self-discovery. Because there's nothing that I could tell you about yourself that you don't already know 100 times better about you. And when you tell yourself about it, there's not so much ego and defensiveness in there. Whereas if I said, hey, Michael, can you tell me something that I did wrong? And you're like, oh, you did this. I'm going to be like, oh, no, I didn't. I this, that, and the other thing, and make up a justification, true. Right? But if you're like, hey, James, like, I saw you do this, like, tell me about what was going on in your head when that was going on. And then I'm talking about it now and I'm realizing, oh, crap, I made a mistake here. And I'm like, yeah, hey, Michael, I'm sorry, bro. I messed up. That was my bad. Let me fix it. So that's the key to being able to really, truly elevate self-awareness, is to do this internal work of introspection, tracking and looking at things, and then evaluate it yourself. If you want to get help from a coach or from somebody else, cool, that's great. But first we need to start with ourselves. And the other best part about it is it doesn't cost any money. It just take 10 or 15 minutes of your time, sit down and do a journal and read what you wrote in that journal.
Yeah, I found that mindset and being intentional about what you do is like everything. And it's what you mentioned before. It does sometimes irritate me. Like the way I handle the staff of people that I have is I give them responsibility and I tell them, I will back up any decision you make 100% in public. But if I don't agree with it, we'll have a private conversation about why and how I would prefer it next time. And what I find it does is it empowers the people to look inside of themselves, make the right decisions, and they tend to make the right decisions more often because they know they're not getting chewed out for this. Because again, that becomes failure, and they don't want to have failure. So we're kind of running out of time, but I really appreciate everything that you've shared. You've been an amazing story. I'd love to actually have you on again and continue talking about your journey. But tell people where they can find you.
Sure. So best place to get us is on our website, awarenesselevation.com. If you go to awarenesselevation.com/time, TIME, you can get a quick little download. It's a very simple and easy framework that most people have heard of before. But my question would be is, when's the last time you did it? And what it is a time tracking exercise. The two most common excuses we hear from everybody is I don't have enough time and I don't have enough money, right? So cool. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get total clarity and awareness of exactly where every minute of your time is going for a 3 or 5 or 7 day span. And then you're going to be able to look at that yourself after you do the assessment, you do the self-discovery and figure out where you could get more of your time back. And with that time, you can either choose to make more money with it or have more fun. Whatever money or richness equates to in your life, you can add more of it to your life with that. So they can hit the website and grab that exercise there. They can also follow us on Instagram at awareness_elevation. and also connect with us on LinkedIn. We put out a ton of articles on LinkedIn, so that's a great place. People can find us, linkedin.com/James F as in Fox, Pyle, Pyle.
Before we get out of here, I want to pile onto what you said. People, if you're struggling with your business, doing what he just said about, looking at your time and where your time is being spent, could be the thing that turns everything around. I actually worked with their car dealership in another country, and they were struggling, and pandemic didn't help at all. And I said, and listening to them, I realized these people are wasting their time on things that are not important. And so I said, have you ever taken like an inventory of where you spend your time and how you spend your time? No, I don't have the time to do that. So, well, you actually don't have the time. You can't afford not to do that. And literally just that one thing literally turned their entire business around, because when you take a good deep dive into what you're doing, you realize that there's a lot of things you're doing maybe you shouldn't even be bothering to do. It's not producing any positives for you. Get rid of it, but you don't realize it because you get into this habit of just doing the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. And this is how I do my day. I get up at this time, I do this, I do that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you need to make a change, a little tweak here, a little tweak there. So excellent advice. And I advise everybody, go to the site, download that, and give it a try. Definitely connect with James online. Are we connected on LinkedIn?
I'm not sure if we are or not.
I think we will be after this. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm not kidding you. I'd love to have you come back on. So
I'd love to be on anytime.
We'll discuss that and get that to happen, because this was an amazing experience for me too. So thanks again, everybody, and thanks for listening to the Technology Alchemist.
Thank you.